We are going to try to give the Belong Collective history in 60 minutes. This is an episode of 60 Minutes. The reason we're doing this is because we just hit 2 years old, and one of the things that's true of an organization is a good organization tells its story, tells its history, and so we want to kind of narrative. Make a narrative of who we are, like share our perspective, but then also like there's a lot of people who are new, who don't know anything about where, like they just started attending the Belong Collective in the middle of quarantine online and don't know our history. And it might be important to them to be like, oh, this is who they are and this is where they come from. And they might see things and be like, why do we do it that way? Or why is that so important? Well, it's kind of important because like our history is part of what makes certain things important. So with that being said, hit it.
Start.
We only got 60 minutes. All right. So we came from another church. We used to be under another name. What was that name, Allie?
The Bridge.
The Bridge. Yes. When I started at the Bridge, oh geez, now I got to remember years. This is where it gets bad. This is where it gets bad when I have to remember years. I want to say I started at the Bridge in 2015.
I feel like you were there at least 2 or 3 years before I came along.
Well, that's helpful. No, let me.
Why
at
not?
least 2 or 3. Let me see which, because like I can look and see like, yeah.
Because I was there 2017.
Yes, so I came in 2015 to the Bridge. The Bridge at the time was a BIC church, Brethren in Christ church, and we were meeting at the school, Lower Dolphin Middle School.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I forgot about the school even. Oh, my gosh.
We were meeting at the middle school. That's the first time you came. We were at the school. Yeah.
Yep.
We were meeting at the middle school, set up, tear down. Yeah, fun times. Thinking back to that, it's just like, wow. You used to have a truck, back it up, load everything, full band on Sundays.
How early would you get there?
Oh my gosh, so early. And then you would hope they had it open, because a lot of times we have to be waiting for them to open it up. And yeah, that was fun times. Yeah, I mean, it was a good time though. That was a good space. Eventually we realized like that space wasn't really working for us, financially got expensive. And some of the expectations we had of the facility were going unmet regularly, even after kind of expressing like, hey, we need this clean, or we need the door open right at the time that we need it open, because 15 minutes late pushes everything back 15 minutes, and we're starting on time, whether you're 15 minutes late or 30 minutes late.
No matter how good you get at making something smooth and efficient, like something could go wrong. Volunteers,
there's always a cord that's missing that you're running around trying to find when you're set up teardown church. There's always something.
You need every minute.
Yeah, it's really stressful on volunteers to be a set up teardown church. And I mean, I say that now knowing that we are a set up teardown church. So I mean, I get it. It's a little less production than it was there. Like there was a lot of, I mean, we unloaded a whole U-Haul trailer, like not trailer, truck every single Sunday. We had a whole kids department with, roll out, racks and stuff. So yeah, those were good times. Then, made the transition to a building we already owned at the time called The Rail, that we renamed to The Bridge. And that became our main campus in Hummelstown. And we moved to 2 services there, and we launched Bridge Midtown. And that's when you had started coming and attending, The Bridge. And I was talking to you about, hey, what do you think about... Oh, you were in Midtown already, and we had other people in Midtown, and we were like, we knew we wanted a presence in Midtown, because we had just been connecting with a lot of people in Midtown, and it seemed kind of odd that a church in Hummelstown way out here was connecting with all these people in Midtown. We just kind of had all these Midtown connections. It just kept popping up. It seemed like every new person that came was either from Midtown, had a connection to Midtown, had a passion to kind of launch a church there. So this is Midtown Harrisburg we're talking about. And then we...
Well, you first asked if I wanted to be on the board.
Yes, if you wanted to be on the board.
Yep.
And
I was like, why do you want me on your board?
Well, what's really funny is, I don't know if you remember this, but you and I had a conversation early on about you wanting to serve as like at a nonprofit somewhere in the city.
Or I was wanting to like serve transient individuals.
Yeah. You had a passion for people on the margins.
Yes.
That's what I gathered from our meeting. I even want to say, if I remember correctly, it was at the Midtown Scholar.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Weird memory. I remember things I don't need to remember, and I forget things I need to remember, but it happens. So we met there, had a good conversation, and afterwards I was like, Allie seems like she could be like a leader at the Midtown campus if we have one. Because at that point, I think it was still in theory. I don't think we had like finalized anything or really even got to a point to where it was like something that we were talking about in any
like
sense.
logistical way.
Yeah. And then when we made the decision to leave the school, it just made sense to launch that campus. And when we made that decision, I started looking for a campus pastor for that location. To be honest, I was looking for a person of color. Like that was my, I was really trying to target a person of color for that campus. Had looked at multiple candidates. We knew it was a part-time role, so we knew whoever it was wasn't going to be able to necessarily uproot their family and move, and that was a pretty big limiting factor. And we also knew we wanted people who held to some particular theological distinctives that were important to us, which that was just our kind of non-negotiables around loving everybody, around accepting everybody, around being understanding and compassionate, and like leading with that. And we just could not find any candidates. And I just remember sitting with Pastor Hank, and me and Hank were talking, and Pastor Hank's from Harrisburg, BSC, and we were talking, and I was just like, man, and he was one of my sources. Like he was helping kind of me. If you don't know, Pastor Hank's African American. He was helping me kind of like connect with different pastors, because I was like, who do you know that might be a good either resource to connect with some people who would be fit in this role well, or and he had connected me to a few people, but nothing was really panning out. And he just said, do you have a female that, he's like, dude, like that would be great if you had a female pastor. It's like you're kind of looking at this diversity from one lens, and it was kind of interesting having an African American tell me that. I was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, and then literally the first thing that popped in my head was Allie. And I was like, I gotta see if Allie could do this. I didn't even Allie could do this. Allie would be great. Like, I literally was like already like, because I had already talked to multiple people and all the things that like weren't really fitting. I was like, Allie would fit there. Allie would fit there. So then we had a long conversation and I convinced you. No, I don't know. Tell me how that went.
Yeah, it took some convincing because I didn't even think I was like worthy of being on the strategic leadership team.
Let alone a pastor.
Let alone like...
Now you learn like pastor is just the title you get so people can write you emails and complain. No, I'm just kidding.
So much more than that. But yeah.
We can tell truths on this podcast. Yeah. We don't need to tell lies. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like when you... I remember telling this story previously, like, you know, when it happened and just like in that moment, my jaw just kind of like dropping, just being like, why? Like, I don't know why you want me to, you know, like why you would be asking me. But I was a much different person at that point in my life also. Like I didn't like very like low confidence levels. But like one of the things that I love about being involved with the Bridge and now the Belong Collective is like this community is like just like always been so encouraging, so supportive, like just like, and has been a huge part of like my own personal journey, you know, in growing as a person. So I was just like, all right, Justin, if you're dumb enough to put me in this role, here we go. I was working full time at the time, and we kind of brought me on a part-time basis, and we put together the launch team for Midtown, and we did a retreat. And so leading up to actually physically launching Midtown, I was in a part-time capacity, and then I worked it out with my job and my boss to like kind of wean off like hours there and like increase until I was full-time with the church. Yeah. Which is a huge transition for me. But I'd do it all over again. Yeah. When we get to where everything went down with everything, you were full-time at the Bridge. Yes. And I was full-time at the Bridge. Yep. So we had 2 full-time employees, and we had even had interns, and along that way we had for a while Bridge Kids director, we'd had an administrative assistant, we'd had a worship director. So we were pretty healthy from the standpoint of like we were growing numerically. We were staff-wise, I think, figuring out our organizational structure. Like we were starting to figure out what we needed. Like how we were going to organize once we went to 2 campuses was different than we were organized before, and we were figuring all that out. But then something kind of created some sideways energy for a year. And then eventually that sideways energy took us off the road. We went way sideways. Yes, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, if you want to go back before that. I just was going to say, like, the Bridge Midtown, we rented, like, just to give that info.
No, that's good. We rented initially when we launched, we rented Salvation Army building. Yep. Man, they were great. They were just great to work with, Salvation Army. Yep. And then initially when we went to Midtown, we kind of wanted to rent Harrisburg Midtown Arts Center. We wanted to be in that kind of a space, an artsy space, or more, you know, I don't know, more like a pub type space than necessarily Salvation Army. Nothing against Salvation Army. It just more wasn't, people didn't gather there just naturally, right?
Right. And the decor inside was a little not our...
yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think of something funny to say that's appropriate, but I won't. So moving on. Okay. HMAC, also known for their amazing decor. No, so we started meeting at HMAC, but we had actually had a conversation prior to going to Salvation Army with HMAC, and it didn't work out. And then we had come back to have a conversation with the owner before we renewed our lease with Salvation Army, and he was like, "Yeah, come meet here." And we were like, "Oh, okay. How much? Oh, well, just come as long as the calendar's free." And we're just like, you and I are like, is this happening right now? Because we had been really wanting to get there and thought, like, I think there was a lot of skepticism about a church coming into Midtown. I think there was just a lot of skepticism.
Yeah,
like, who are these people? What's their agenda? Yeah. We're not going to let them meet in our space until we see what's going on. And I think we had created enough trust at that point and we had even done events with HMAC up to that point. I think we did the This Is America event before we rented that space, right?
Yes. And then there was also...
we'd done other things for sure there.
The fundraiser.
Oh.
For
the fundraiser
licenses.
for the license to... Oh, man, it had a cool name.
License to Rock.
License to Rock, because it was a rock concert, not really, kind of, where we raised money. We had talked with the local kind of immigration services and asked what they needed most right now, and we were thinking like, oh, we'll help with whatever they need, and they were like, well, we really need. What we have like a line and backup for is for people to go to driver's ed school so that they can drive. And if they can't get that, they can't get a job. They can't have freedom. Like there was just so much that this kind of funnel that was created was blocking. And so we were like, oh, wasn't expecting that. Mm-hmm. Could we give scholarships to drivers to driver's ed? And so I don't know how many scholarships. I want to say it was something like five. That's what I was going to say, 5 or 6. Yeah. So yeah,
that's like 5 tangible.
That's 5 tangible. Like,
people.
I mean, in this case, like legitimately can make a huge impact on freedom, income, even like housing. Cause now you have access to so much more housing because you don't have to walk to your job or you don't have to take the metro to your job. Like there's just so much more access, when you can drive. So that was a really cool event we did there. Again, I think that was definitely something that built some trust with the community. Cause it's like, whoa, who are these guys playing in this concert for that? That was cool. Yeah, This Is America event though was actually bigger than I thought it was going to be. That was pretty wild, from what I remember. Like when that event started, I was like, "There's a lot more people here than I was planning on being here," and a very diverse group of people. Yeah, that absolutely. Attended. And I thought the conversation of what happened went really well. Not like to toot our horn or anything. I'm just more saying like. I don't think people anticipated a church putting something like that on, like a local church putting something like that on.
I didn't anticipate, like, I wasn't sure what to expect. Yeah. And like, I mean, this is like, I mean, I might have conversations around racism, like with people that I'm close with, but never on a scale like that. Yeah. So it was my first time on like a public, like in a public way. So I didn't anticipate like there were people being so vulnerable and like honest. And like there were moments where it got a little tension filled, but
you have to.
You have to.
How are you going to have a conversation about racism without tension? How are you going to have a conversation about racism without emotion? Yeah. Like people act like you got to divorce like anger or frustration or grief or disappointment from those conversations. It's like, well, then you're not really having a conversation. Right. So,
and me being so fresh into it, I was just like, I don't even know how to be a pastor.
Well, Allie's also like, Allie's also an empath. So when someone gets angry, she feels it. When someone gets sad, she feels it.
Yeah.
And like,
I'm like,
what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? I'm like, get in there. Let's go. Put the gloves on. Oh, that 8 energy.
But it was a great, experience. So, yeah.
So, so we had started meeting at HMAC. We had been meeting at HMAC for a while. And we made a video. Actually, I think.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, so I don't know how you want to go into this we
started at Salvation Army. Yeah. But then, did we go to HMAC before. We didn't go to HMAC until the whole.
Yeah, we did.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were the bridge at HMAC for a while. Yeah, I remember the website and everything.
Yes, you are correct. Yes. I remember
I don't know
putting
how
up
long
the bridge banners
Yeah,
and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
I don't
all
know how
coming back.
I don't know how long we were there. Like it might have been 6 months, it might have been a year. I think we were already had entered into some of the conflict we're about to talk about before that transition had happened. Or at least when I say entered into that conflict, I would say like we started to have some of the email exchanges.
Yeah.
I think prior to that transition. Because
Yeah.
I want to say that transition took place
2008.
So when did we launch Midtown? 2018? Would you guess? Would that
Wait,
be?
yes.
Okay.
September 2018. Wait, I came on June. Wasn't it June 2017?
Yeah, I think it was 2017 that we launched Bridge
Yeah,
Midtown.
I think it was too.
Yeah, because if it was 2018, that'd be too long ago.
Right.
So 2017, let me see. Midtown launch was, the calendar runs my life. September 10th, 2017. So, and here's why I know actually for sure that we were already in Midtown, even almost for a full year, because that would have been when our contract was renewed, September 10th. We would have made the move to Midtown. And one of the reasons I know that for sure is because I did my TEDx talk October 14th of 2018.
Right. Yep.
And we had Midtown service going on downstairs at HMAC while I was doing my TED talk
That was
upstairs.
a stressful day.
That was, I think I preached that morning, or did I not? Someone else preached. I don't know. That was a long day, but yeah, so there was definitely already conversations happening. What would you say prior to that?
Yes.
I mean, I don't really know how to drop in to this conversation in a way that's going to help guide someone who maybe has no clue our history. So should we try to do like a brief overview timeline? What are your thoughts on how to approach this for the newbies in the room?
Yeah. I don't want to I don't know. I guess just try and give the direct, just give.
Do we want to spoiler alert it before we go back and talk through it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's not spoiler alert it. We'll let it be really tense.
Okay.
Get your popcorn.
What are we talking about?
Michael Jackson popcorn me. No, so we made a video. Let's just start there because that was really the crux of the well, there's two kind of
try and compartmentalize.
Yeah, compartmentalize it. That's a good term. So if we compartmentalize this, there was a video made.
The bullet points.
There was a video made that was called our You Belong video, and
it had been up for a year.
Was really not that controversial in our eyes and in the eyes of the thousands of people who had seen it prior to it blowing up and becoming a problem. But probably the biggest concern in the video, which wasn't a concern for us, but became a concern for others, was that there was a lesbian couple represented in the video. Would that be a fair way of saying? Okay. That video ended up getting put into an anonymous letter that was written by a pastor and sent to multiple people in a particular conference of our previous denomination.
Yes.
That sparked a lot of, I don't want to say outrage. I guess I would say we'll say outrage. People who were contacting the national director's office with questions, concerns, what's going on? What are we doing?
Why are we representing the denomination this way?
Yeah. So anyway, we started getting, we didn't know that letter was out there, and it was written anonymously. So the pastor's name wasn't on it who wrote it. It was posted on a blog, and eventually it got back to us. But before it got back to us, we were starting to get emails from the national director of our denomination saying, I'm receiving a lot of complaints about this video, and I have some questions. And in essence, wanted to meet with us to talk through why we made the video, what we mean by the video, Fair?
Fair.
Then what happened next was I received a text from some of my pastor friends who had found this anonymous letter that was on a blog. I think it had got sent to them because there were multiple pastors in the BIC named in it. And it was pretty much just putting people on blast. Is that fair? Like,
yes.
It's just like putting people on blast, which is hilarious looking back now because I think the majority of people put on blast in there are not in the denomination anymore. And I would say it speaks to how well the denomination did at defending those people. That would be about all I would say. The frustration is we downloaded the document because there was a Word document attached to the blog. And then we opened the properties of the Word document and found the pastor's name. And it was like, oh man, like, okay, this was an actual pastor. This wasn't some like, just, look, let's be honest. There's some people who are just going to do things and say things and have their opinions. But this was an actual pastor. At that point, we found out it was a pastor who's credentialed in this denomination. And wow, that was hard for us to take. It was hard for a lot of people to take. Still hard for me to take today. Like I still get frustrated about it. But mainly because of how it was handled afterwards. And by handled, I mean not being handled afterwards. The next step was that we needed to meet with the national director to discuss our video. And without getting all into it, that didn't go well. I mean, I think you described it and others described it as an interrogation. I mean, I think my theology was on trial.
Yeah.
And there was point blank questions wanted or answers wanted, like two things phrased in a certain way that went beyond what our manual of doctrine and government said. And I had felt like I had been very clear when I came into the denomination about who I was, and that when it came to the issue of LGBT inclusion, my answer was, or not necessarily LGBT inclusion, but is it a sin? My answer was, I don't know. And I had been operating from that answer, including people. We had baptized a gay person at Midtown campus. We had gay people serving in our kids ministry. These were all points of contention of like, would you allow for that? Well, we do. Would you do this? Yeah, we do. Can they take communion? They do. Like it's not like this isn't a theoretical question for us. This is we are doing that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that says we can't.
Right.
So put it in the book. And then we have to vote on it. And when that vote comes up, let's see how the conversation goes. Because right now all it says is I can't marry people. And at that point, I was fine with that. I was fine with saying, okay, I'm willing to do everything outside of that to include people and let them know. And so we would have gay people come to our church and we would let them know that was the line. We would let them know we operate within a traditional context. Our denomination does. The only thing outlined in our manual of doctrine and government that the pastors cannot serve you in is marriage. And we were faithful to that in the denomination, faithful to not crossing that line. But it seemed like there was a lot of unwritten rules / undefined lines that we were beginning to discover in that meeting.
That would be said in person, but not in an email.
We could not get it in writing. We were asking for
writing,
things that were said in writing, and they were said in back rooms, but not written in writing. And we had made multiple requests for that in writing. I think it came to a point to where the national director, to kind of summarize all of it, because we can't really sit here and go through all of it. But that was the summer of, let's just try to stay timeline wise. The summer of 2018 was kind of that drama, I would say. And by the end of summer of 2018, going into the fall of 2018, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the national director had sent me a, would this be the way you would say it? Or are you willing to affirm these things? And the way it was written was very binary, in my estimation, very black and white. And I was like, that's not how I would say any of that. That's not, kind of if you can agree to this, we don't have any problems. And I'm like, I can't agree to that. That's not written in our manual of doctrine and government. Why do I have to agree to this? Other pastors don't have to agree to this. So it just became this push back and forth and lots of emails, lots of meetings, and pretty much all that. It's shocking to me that I look back and I'm like, how was I preaching every Sunday? how were we doing anything as a church?
And not only
Because
that, but
we were growing. We were numerically growing. And I was like spending 30 hours a week doing
And even
emails.
though I was the campus pastor, like I was pretty much like the facilitator of making sure that like the, you know, scheduling volunteers and making sure all other operations took place. But I would preach some Sundays.
And you were getting good at preaching too.
Oh, thank
I'm happy
you.
to see it come back at some point. But go ahead, sorry.
But Justin you were doing
3 times a Sunday.
two at
What was it, 9:30 and 11 at
Yeah,
Hummelstown?
and then
5 o'clock at night at Midtown.
Yeah.
So I was doing 3 sermons. You know,
While all of this
I had it down
on.
pretty good by the 3rd.
But sometimes though, like we would do like a special series or something geared more toward Midtown.
So I would have 2 sermons to prepare.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm spending easily 20 to 30 leadership email hours, communication hours between you and I, and it was all sideways energy stuff. It was all like, how do we respond to this thing that they asked? Yep. And then like, it would be like, okay, now we have a board meeting where we could talk about stuff that we need to do as a church to move forward, or we can spend 2 hours talking about how our communication has gone with the denomination over the last 3-4 weeks, which has been a lot, and which I need to bring you up to speed on because it could have severe consequences. Like at that point, it was becoming very clear that my license, I wouldn't say it was up for grabs, but it was definitely, it was just, there was a lot of tension there. And I think at that point still was in the process of my
doctrinal questionnaire, which is, sounds fun. But I had to write a doctrinal questionnaire. I had to answer a bunch of questions. And so even for that doctrinal questionnaire, I had, I don't even know, when did I get my DQ? When did that actually go through? Because that happened during all of the process, which was another whole thing that I actually got my, DQ during, oh man, let me see if it's in here. I don't think it's going to be written in here as like doctrinal questionnaire. Maybe it would be. Yeah, I don't know. Just for a time check, we're at 31 minutes and 20 seconds.
Gosh, fun times. So, okay, 31 minutes. So let's skip that. That's not important. Anyway, so I got, at some point in here, they authorized me as a licensed pastor. I want to say that happened around the fall of 2018.
That sounds right. Because I remember like everything else happened in the spring.
Yeah, what happens next happens in the spring. So we get through summer, fall. There's a point where I have a pretty heart-to-heart with the bishop where I think I was kind of like, when nothing really resolved. It was kind of like we're going to stop. I think the denomination was kind of like, something had resolved in like November, December. Like there was just a kind of like a don't push the line. It was just like it was an unsaid thing. It wasn't really said in the sense of like written down, like, because I wouldn't agree to what they had said, because I didn't really feel like it was in good conscience. It represented our manual of doctrine and government, but it also didn't represent my heart on the matter. At that point, I was still figuring it out. January, you and I went to Q conference in Chicago. Super cold. Oh my gosh, I was so cold that week, wasn't it? We had to like walk anyway. And then our flights got delayed. It was fun times.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But while I was there, I had done a bunch of interviews for my podcast and started posting those interviews. And some of those interviews were with people who were affirming, right? And so I posted those interviews. Then I posted why I'm side A. Yeah. And talked through my process of coming to affirming theology, which...
Can you explain side A and side B real fast?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a spectrum on each side. I think that's really important to say. So like side A being affirming theology of the LGBT community can span all over the place. You can have people arguing for just free, open sexuality, whatever. Like, does that make sense? You can have, but for me, side A represented no longer seeing loving monogamous same-sex relationships as sinful, and largely out of the church's call to include all people, but then also out of deep study and research, largely prompted by the drama, largely prompted by the 50 plus questions I got from the denomination and the probably over 100 pages I sent them back and forth of PDF documents that had like 12-point font all the way through of answers that, you know, I had to think through and process in deeper ways. And just seeing that the other side of this coin looks nothing like Jesus to me. Like the other side of this coin, which is side B, to either say people need to change, they need to be transformed, because we all need to be transformed by Jesus. So their sexuality needs to be transformed. And just seeing the damage and harm that it done to people, like that's not working. Like it's one thing to say an alcoholic needs to be transformed. Like I would agree. I also would agree the timeline for that transformation looks very different for all people. The process of that transformation even looks different for all people. I'm not saying like AA doesn't work or other things don't work, but I'm saying like how that is enacted is always from the place of community and love and inclusion. And if they choose to walk away, they choose to walk away, but you're not keeping them away. Now, there might be a need to set up healthy boundaries if someone's being destructive, but that's not the reason we send LGBT people away. We send them away because we say you're destructive. And so there's not because they are, but because, oh, what you're doing is destructive. It became very clear that like all the ways I'd been taught to see this and even conditioned to kind of take a middle ground was like, I can't stay in the middle anymore, because I was starting to just see the harm that the middle was. Yep. And by the way, I want to be clear, if you're in the middle, I'm not saying you're causing harm. I'm just saying in my spirit, I realized that like in my position of influence, the platform I had, I couldn't stay in the middle anymore.
I think at that point too, we got to a question as a board, like... Yeah.
Our board was pretty much fully affirming, like even before me, I think. And I mean, in this situation, even though like there was kind of just this weird like ceasefire almost, like that's a good way of putting it, because here's the deal: if I had never even, I just want to say, if I had never posted, I'm afraid, like side A, we felt like there was a microscope on us that at any point, right, something we posted on social media, right, we were at Pride Fest the year before. If we were going to be there again this summer, is that going to be a problem? Right. Are we going to be like, we're just ratted out again? Is another pastor going to like rat us out because we said something in a sermon? Going to like pull it out of context and post it, or in context and post it? Yeah. So after a year long, like, yeah, all this back and forth, all the meetings, all the emails, all the questions, the interrogations, like this microscope that was put on us, like we were just like, okay, like even though there's like a ceasefire right now, like what do we really expect for the future? Yeah. Like, is this any way to like exist? Yeah, as a church. That was a real question we were talking about on the board at that time. I remember. And I remember us going to Q conference as we need some answers. Like we need to go like do some more digging, talk to people, but also about be how with people who are doing this. And just like, I mean, I think even as well, like just trying to find support of like, there's other churches out there in the same boat, you know, mm-hmm. like how are they handling it? What mm-hmm. are they doing? Like, what are we supposed to do here? Yeah. Like, I mean, there is, you know, it's like, there's a part where, you know, it's just like, you want to have the influence that you can have within a larger denomination to say, like, let's have this conversation, like for real, mm-hmm. as a denomination. Like we wanted to be, you know, we wanted to like encourage that. Mm-hmm. There was no desire for a public conversation. Correct. It was it all had to happen behind closed doors. Yep. Like, and we even in those conversations felt shut down. Like, we don't want to hear stories. We don't want, like, we came with stories from our community. Yep. Like, we don't want to hear stories. Literally a quote from our national director's mouth. We don't want to hear stories. We're not here. No, let me make it clear so I can actually quote him correctly. We're not here to share stories. What are we here for? Well, there's two sides of this coin. One side's the theology and one side's the stories. And here's the deal, just to be clear. There is no way to divorce theology from people. Jesus couldn't do it. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yep.
So if you're going to have to divorce theology from people, you're going to have bad theology. Like, I'm just going to say it. Like, and so it's like, no, these stories matter. They're valid and they're happening in your churches. Some of your churches don't know they're happening. We do. Learn from us. Listen to us. The way you're trying to respond isn't working, and it's going to hurt people, and it already has hurt people. It's going to keep hurting people. So that was difficult, and I definitely will own up that I got defensive in that meeting because I got really frustrated with like just how matter of fact this conversation was.
Yep.
Because I didn't feel like it was settled. I felt like it was just handled like we had settled this, and I'm like, if we settled it, we would have a very different MDG. Yep. Our MDG right now only says I can't marry people. It does not say gay people can't come to faith and be baptized. It does not say gay people can't take communion. It does not say gay people can't, serve in the kids ministry. Why are you even asking me if they can serve in the kids ministry? First of all, what does that even imply?
Right.
Like, what does that imply?
Yep.
Like, and that's the whole other thing that was like, oh, the video's a problem because you still have a knee-jerk ew reaction when you see a lesbian couple in a video. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about how a whole conference had a knee-jerk ill reaction to that. Because we didn't say anything theological. They couldn't handle a lesbian couple being used in a church promotion. I mean, so anyway, don't get me wrong. All right, so it still just irks me, though, because even as we think 2 years later, and you and I have had so many conversations, and we're having deeper conversations about this even more now that we're kind of distant from it. So there might be some podcasts coming out in the future where we talk a little more in depth, but like
all the details,
all the juicy details. It needs to be sponsored if it's going to come out though. So like someone pay for it. No, I'm just kidding. So no, but like, I do feel like even 2 years later, as I go back and think about it, it's like, and I don't say this in a negative way, but sure, it's negative too. The like anger is still there, the frustration, and like the missed opportunity. That's
yep.
what I just think like, man, we had a great opportunity.
It's not even like
to start. You and I were not demanding that they change their doctrine. We didn't go into the room saying the MDG needs to be changed. We didn't go into the room saying we need to be able to marry gay couples. We didn't go in. We had a community also that was primed to be flexible. Like in the sense of like, we didn't have people who were like, if you don't change this now, we're out.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we had a community that would have been flexible to be the test community, example community of what it looks like to include people and how like this isn't something to be afraid of. This is something that can like be good. And the whole opportunity missed. And we'll talk about how that happened. But do you have anything to clarify there? Because we got 20 minutes left.
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you think we're going to make it? I think we're going to make
so.
it. Okay. So
this is like,
are you starting to like hold your breath? Like, oh no, are we going to make it? No. Okay. 60 minutes with Allie and Justin. So I go to Israel on March 1st, to Israel and Palestine, and
2019.
So we're in the spring after our Q conference, a couple months after our Q conference. Had some conversations with the denomination prior to leaving. Some like Q&A, not Q&A, but there was just some questions. I think they had opened up conversation again. Yeah, I think they had, and I had a particular person on the board reach out to me. And I had read like a 5-page paper he put together for me to read. It's written specifically to me, if I remember correctly. Left on the flight March 1st. On my flight back, March 14th, landed in Canada, opened my email, and found out that my license had been revoked.
Oh, that's right, because you were under review. They did make you aware that
I was under review before I left. It was maybe earlier in that month.
Yeah.
Or earlier in February, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
That.
See, this is where my memory is getting foggy. Was I aware?
LC was Leadership Council, right? Was reviewing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or was it? What was the other board?
Well, there was the CMD,
Yeah. I'm like QVC.
Commission, QVC, doing some shopping. No, Commission of Ministry and Doctrine, I believe. How do I remember these things? I think so. And then there was Leadership Council. Yeah. They had put me under review, I think, because of the Side podcast, or at least that was the reason given. I still think we would have got to that point if we would have done Pride Fest over the summer. If we would have it
would have been
the next shoe was going to drop.
Yep.
And even if I didn't say I was on one side, it was going to become apparent that like us playing the line was problematic. Like,
right. Yep.
Because we were just being watched. So, and again, that might be our perspective, and that might be thinking poorly of the denomination, and that's a fair reaction. If somebody's here or if someone's listening that would say that doesn't accurately reflect the past, I would say that's how we felt, because our process through the whole thing didn't really feel like a process that was looking for the best in us. It looked like it was looking for a way to break relationship with us. That was my experience pretty much from the first meeting on. And to be clear, I didn't sense that from our bishop. That was more headquarters.
Yep.
My thoughts. Anyway, so I land, find out I don't have a license. Makes for a fun time coming back from a Israel-Palestine trip when I've, processed all that. I had a lot of stuff to do. I mean, I was supposed to go lobby on Capitol Hill when I came back from that with the group, and I had to skip that because this kind of obviously took priority, because to lose your license in a denomination, or at least in this particular denomination, meant that you could no longer be a pastor in the denomination. So it pretty much meant that like I needed to resign / start the process of hiring a new pastor for the bridge. So we started an appeals process. The appeals process was messy, to say the least. How about you give the highlights of the appeals process? I feel like I've talked a lot, and I want you to talk more.
I'm like just now remembering that we even had an appeals process. Like, I'm not joking, man. Like,
it was all so
much,
right? It was all so much.
Like, just so many layers of craziness. Gosh, I don't even know if I remember.
So we filed for the appeals process.
Yeah, like you're gonna.
Well, and
if I had my
I'll
binder
say,
with
yeah,
me,
if you had your binder, we made binders of all like everything.
It's real thick.
It's like that thick, yeah.
It's real thick.
Yeah, you might hear about it in a future podcast episode. So we did an appeals process where we called for an appeal to where I could appeal to Leadership Council. The problem was normally someone's making that decision and then you're appealing to Leadership Council. Leadership Council had already made the decision. So I'm appealing to the group that made the decision without necessarily an independent arbiter in the room, which is like, it was an interesting process altogether. And I don't know that it was always a fair process. So I submitted my reasons for appealing and why I felt like I should have my license, including, and I think probably the best argument being that, hey, the pastor who wrote this letter still has a license, has not apologized to me or any of my friends that he blasted and put on blast, apparently slandering other people isn't an offense to lose your license over, but because I want to include gay people, you better get me the hell out of here. Like, that pissed me off. Still pisses me off today. Like, because it just showed, like you're not really trying to protect anything here. Like you're not trying to protect proper doctrine or even the manual of doctrine and government. You're not trying to say we need to do things within the manual of doctrine and government, because the manual of doctrine and government makes it very clear, and I even quoted it, why this pastor needs to be put under discipline. And part of that discipline should be, if he doesn't come and make it right to the people that he wronged, get him out of here. Like, you have every right to pull that pastor's license. Didn't happen. Anyway, at least didn't happen as fast as it happened to me.
And didn't we ask for, there was something with the appeals that they were like, this group is going to, oh yeah.
No, you're fine. I just liked it when you had it out because I could see. Go ahead. This group is going to what? No, you're fine. I see. I see it upside down.
This, this group is going to oversee your appeals process. And we're like, that's the group that made
Yes.
the decision. Like,
Yes.
can't we?
Well, that's what I was talking about. So the group that made the decision was the group that overseed the process, and the person who relayed information was the person who we've been talking to the whole time, the national director. Like, it was
Right.
just, the whole process was like, all right, so don't we want an appeals process that's more independent than the previous process and includes more
or less
people than
biased,
the
yeah.
previous process? Like, shouldn't this be widened out now that, and it's whatever. But the other argument was the Brethren in Christ is a historic peace denomination. I have a nonviolent perspective, a peace ethic, largely out of my belief in Jesus and the words of Jesus. So I believe in nonviolence. Not everyone in our denomination does. And this is a core distinctive of our denomination. I was shocked when I came in the denomination and started meeting people who don't have that belief and who argue against it, who even preach against it. I have multiple people I know who have preached on Sunday against women in ministry in our denomination. Against. Not that they're just like passively against, preached against, won't let women carry the title pastors in their church. That's in our manual of doctrine and government. Not an issue worth pulling someone's license. So it became clear that we were like picking this issue as an issue for pulling someone's license. You're giving people the freedom to believe violence is okay in certain circumstances, yet we have an ethic that it's not. We say we hold that ethic high. It's literally a core distinctive of what it means to be Anabaptist, which is one of our most distinctive streams. But not enough to actually pull the license for a pastor in our denomination, apparently. And look, I'm not arguing they should pull those licenses. Does that make sense? I'm not arguing. But the
umbrella's not big enough for
Exactly.
us.
The umbrella's big enough for them.
But
the
not
umbrella's
us.
big enough for a pastor who slanders multiple pastors, ultimately ending in many of them leaving the denomination.
Yep.
But the umbrella's not big enough for gay people to be loved. Oh my gosh. Drives me nuts. Drives me nuts to this day because I still see it repeating. And I know it because when I made my Pride post this year, 2021, the amount of pastors that reached out to me privately in messages.
And publicly.
Oh, well, those are other ones. The ones who publicly reached out to me, that's a whole other thing. I'm saying the ones who reach out to me privately and were like, I'm in process on this. I just feel this conflict, this internal conflict. And they feel like they're in between a rock and a hard place. And I'm like, I've been there.
Yep.
I've been there. And wanting advice, wanting to know what should I do next. And I'm just like,
keep asking questions.
Well, keep asking questions. Also, like, figure out your finances. I'm like, figure out, like, you're about to lose your job. Yeah. So like, there's also this part of me that's like, it's sad that these pastors in process, the first thing that comes to my mind is, I have no hope that your denomination or your church is going to make the right decision. So start getting your finances in order. That's my first reaction, because I'm like, you got a family to take care of, you got kids. Like, that's my first reaction, because I'm like, I've lived it. I've been through it. Like, I know where this goes. And it doesn't go to them like actually being like, hey, let's create a process where we talk about this and we work through this as a community and we try to find middle ground, and maybe even a space where we can have churches in our denomination that are affirming and others that aren't, that hold the traditional ethic. Like, how do we get to, there's no, and
as much as that would be the ideal path forward to opening it up, traditionally conservative denominations on this, I just don't, unless you're in a very unique denomination.
Which I honestly believe the Brethren in Christ was the unique denomination that could pull it off.
But
because of the peace ethic.
It's just not, you're just asking for, to always straddle that line. And once you do, our experience, just look at our experience, and maybe it would be different for others, but if you cross the line a little too much, then you're forever in that space. You're forever looking over your shoulder,
Well, I would say, I think from the beginning of the process, it did not take long for us to lose trust in the denomination. And I think the only way it happens is if trust is built on mutual understanding and respect, which I don't think we received. And I think eventually we realized the way the process was going, they hadn't earned our respect.
Right.
And so it just led to a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of differences. So what ended up happening was I wrote an appeal. I wrote an appeal, pretty long one, including all the stuff I already listed. Allie and I went and sat before a group of people. I wish I knew the exact demographic. Like, I wish I could have known. I should have asked everyone's age in that room. Looking back, if there was one thing I could have done different, it would have been that. Okay, so there's like 24 people in the room, I want to say. 2 females. Is that fair? I think there's 2 females. One was the secretary, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Shots fired. Pow, pow.
Basically, the
2 Hispanics in the room from our Florida, from the Florida region, southeastern region. The rest were white men. The majority were probably over 60 years old. Fair, unfair, close, maybe over 50.
Yeah, I would say
55, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to tell age. This is why I should have asked the demographics in the room.
We have 8 minutes left. Less than 8 minutes.
And they said, we're taking your license away.
Yes.
There you go. Bam. You never guessed. Yeah, peeled the Band-Aid right off. Wasn't really the conversation didn't really happen like I even imagined it happening before. It was a lot of random stuff, even about like transgenderism and stuff. And I was like, I've made no statements about transgender stuff in this last year that we've been in conversation, but now in my appeals, we're talking about transgender. What does this have to do with it? Even like, I think Brian came to my defense, our bishop, like, this isn't really pertinent to what we're talking about. And I'm like, thank you. Like this isn't like, it just became this weird, like, hey, if we do this, there's dominoes and like this kind of like, slippery slope talk. So we didn't know when we left that they made the decision afterwards.
Right.
And so you and I were in the upper room at the old bridge in the office area.
Yeah.
And got a call from Brian saying that
the answer was no.
The answer was no. Well, to be fair, I know we have limited time here, but to be fair, it was, you have one of 2 options. The answer is either no, or you can go into a process of learning.
Oh, yeah.
You can read all these books and be part of this 3-month kind of learning thing. And I said, okay, and if I'm part of that and I still come to the conclusion I have now, I'm out or I'm in. Like, is this a learning like we can really process together and we'll learn in community, or is this a learning, or is this an indoctrination? Like, because right now it's like, I've had enough sideways energy. I don't need 3 more months of sideways energy. That's just going to end where we are today.
Right.
So, it became clear that like, no, that's to get you to a different place.
Yes.
Well, we didn't get here for me to just get to a different place in 3 months. That's not happening. So, yeah, so that didn't happen. We were told that we had, I think at that point, like a week, right? It was like a short turnover.
Very short
turnover. And we were like, whoa. I think I think Brian was on speaker and you were in the room and I was talking to him. And I immediately was like, so who's coming in? Who's coming in to preach? Because who's coming in to pastor? Because you got to have someone in line. If you've already thought about who's next, because you're not making that decision to push us out this fast,
right?
Without leadership ready to go. And he's like, yeah, we got someone in mind. And I'm like, well, who is it? What's going on? Like, and then come to find out it was someone on our staff at the time, who was in line, which created a whole nother slew of problems, because this was a staff member who had been part of a lot of conversations while also having conversations with the denomination about stepping in the role when I exited, which became clear that the appeals process was not in good faith.
Right.
Like, there was already a plan. By the way, we had not created a plan for anything after the bridge, because in our mind, there's no after the bridge. We're gonna fight this thing. Like, we're gonna be here. So
then we did have to,
then immediately we went into like urgent conversations of, in some ways, hysteria.
Presenting it to the community.
Yeah, in some ways, like, we're just like, what is gonna happen now? Oh, we got to launch a new community. What? So I just remember sitting around a table thinking of names, and we had so many names, and we were like, I was like, guys, we need to name this thing. Like, and the Belong Collective was like the only thing that was fitting, and we were like, it's kind of wordy. But here's the deal. We've got to like make a website because we're meeting in 2 days. We got to come out with a name. So we met it was June. No, hold on. Let me make sure I get this date right because I definitely don't want to miss our first day. What was it? Why is it not in my calendar here? Oh, I didn't put it in the calendar. I have it for this year. Hold on one second. But we met at HMAC where we had been meeting previous. We had been meeting
as the
Midtown community. But since we had a relationship there, we had talked to the owner and began, our meetings there. And that was on June 2nd, Sunday, June 2nd. Of 2019.
Yep.
2 years ago. A little over 2 years ago now. And then we met at HMAC regularly. Part of the struggle was we left our building.
Right, which was the building, all the property,
everything. Like
by the denomination.
Like we're talking like down to guitar cords, computers, everything we had that signs,
even subscriptions to programs that we used to schedule volunteers.
Yeah, everything, all the programs we had, that was the hardest thing to lose from like just a structural piece. And the reason we lost all that was because they were planning on relaunching because they thought they were going to keep everybody. They lasted one Sunday. And we could have kept all that. Like not necessarily the building, but like the banners. We could have kept the name. We could have kept the website. We could have kept the Facebooks, the Instagrams. Right. Like that was another frustrating piece of like, you couldn't just give us this stuff. Like take the property, take the stuff but like, let us have the name and the reputation and the Instagram and the Facebook and the stuff. There wasn't any negotiation or willingness to let us keep any property. Which looking back, I'm like, maybe we should have fought more for that. But I don't think we would have got it. Yeah, whatever. I like the Belong Collective more anyways. It's a cooler name. More wordy. TBC. We're down to 2 minutes, 2-minute warning. So we launched there. What are some highlights? So we met. Our community was amazing. Like we raised a bunch of money. We had like a list of things that we needed to buy, and then everybody started buying stuff. We bought, like people were buying guitar cords and people were buying extension cords and sound systems and laptop computers, and we were making it work. And you and I went a while without a salary, but then we got a salary, and I had to move out of the parsonage, but that's fine because we made it work. Like it was definitely an adjustment.
Thanks to another part of the community.
Yeah. Exactly. Like we made it work. It was a struggle. It was difficult, but what's really weird is like when you make this transition, one of the things that I said was really weird right out the gate was like, oh, so when you're at an affirming church, you don't have to like constantly every week be talking about sexuality. You can just say, we affirm you. Like it just felt like we had lived in this like place for so long of like every week this being it. So we met for not even a year. We met for 8 months maybe. And then we were getting ready to move out of HMAC to Appalachian Brewing Company on the second floor. We were going to have our first Sunday there of what we were hoping was multiple more Sundays. And that was the first day of quarantine, first day of shutdown.
We've been online ever since.
And we've been online.
I mean, we've
done a couple outdoor gatherings here and there. But we have not even had an Easter service in person. Think about that.
Oh, gosh.
We didn't have an Easter service in 2020, and we didn't have an Easter service in 2021 in person. And I don't even really think we had a Christmas Eve service. I think we had a pre-Christmas service at HMAC because I don't think we could do Christmas Eve at HMAC.
Right.
That first 2019 year. And then 2020 was online for Easter or for Christmas. So
2, 1.
So now we're meeting in person again over the summer. Look at that. Yay. 60 minutes right under the cap. All right. We can give closing thoughts. Any closing thoughts to like TBC and like, I don't know, just as we celebrate 2 years, like any closing?
What a journey.
For real. I would have never guessed that this would be where we are. I mean, a global pandemic too wasn't really in the cards.
I don't know. I just have a lot of gratitude, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even amongst the frustration and, you know, bits of anger or whatever, like, I would not have done anything too much differently. I don't think. I mean,
we would have hoped for circumstances to be different.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
That was going to be my next sentence. You know, like I, you know, it's just like you have all the hope in the world that people will listen or, you know, dive in and do some of the same hard work, you know, and try and have more, you know, and it's an assumption that, you know, maybe people just don't have relationships with those in the LGBTQ community, but like that's made a huge difference for me. You know, growing up I didn't, but like moving to Harrisburg and making a ton more friends and being connected and acquainted with a whole bunch of people, like I understand so much more than I did growing up. So, and I'm just at a way different place, and it's just like, I know that that's not everybody's experience, and you try so hard to impart that or whatever, you know, have those conversations, and it's just like you can't make somebody, you know. But I just have a lot of gratitude toward our community and what I don't know, they're just awesome. Like I agree. Like it's just like a whole. You can sigh. It's like a sigh of relief, you know, walking into a community like the Belong Collective where you're just like, oh, I can be myself. Like, period. And that's a pretty great feeling. So
I agree. I want to say the same in gratitude toward our community, but I want to make sure to highlight some specific people. Because when we made that transition to become the Belong Collective, and when we found out that there was a staff member that was staying to try to lead this new thing, I immediately had like fear of abandonment. Like, oh, so I got to the finish line on this and now I'm out and y'all are just going to ride with him now. Like, does that make sense? That kind of became this feeling that I had, right?
If you don't know Justin's like very big on like, I don't know, like loyalty. Like he's a pretty big, like.
I have, you know, things I've talked with the therapist about.
Which we all have our things. Like there's no, like whatever, you know, there's no shame.
Sure, no shame. We're going to go a whole nother hour if we open up that can of worms. But yes, I have feelings of, I think for the most part.
There's like a high value on loyalty.
I think for the most part, it's not like a blind loyalty that I ask, but it's, if you're in my corner, you're in my corner, and I'm in your corner, and we have each other's back.
And that there's like a certainty in that.
And there's a certainty. And the moment that certainty is not there anymore, you could not do more to lose my trust, would be the way of saying it. Like there's just nothing else you could do more to lose my trust. And it's very different than the type of person who would come to me with criticism or asking me a question. That's different. But going behind my back, finding out afterwards that something was happening, it's a long road to get back. So yeah, that's all I would say. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But that is attached to a fear of abandonment. Oh man, we're just doing the therapy session here. Okay. But I'm saying, so that triggered that, you know what I mean? It triggered that in me of like, wow, like I'm going to be kind of stuck here with everyone's going to move on and I'm going to be left alone with no license and I'm going to be trying to pay the bills and I don't even know where I'm going to go. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'll just never forget the board being like, well, we're leaving and starting something new. And I'm like, and I just, thinking back, I have so much gratitude for that board of people. And then also all the head volunteers who signed. We there was like 50 people almost that signed this thing. We had every worship leader, volunteers, just like nearly everyone signed this thing that we had written back to the denomination about our intentions. And everyone on the board signed it. And there was just this feeling of like, I've been in so many church boardrooms that I'm like, this kind of unity doesn't really hardly ever exist, especially for something this major. And especially when you have a staff member that has deep ties to people on this board, like deep relationships, who's going to be stepping in to this role, it just became like really apparent of like, wow, okay. Like, you couldn't have jazzed me up anymore, because the same thing that's this fear of a lack of loyalty, right? Like when I see it, it's like, oh man, like I feel like this is possible. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's something,
Right.
there's a seed we can plant here. And so that seed has sprouted into the Belong Collective. We are a toddler crawling around, bumping into things. And hopefully we can, you know, bump into more things together this year instead of in our own spaces.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's a good recap for 2 years. And who knows what this next year holds. Hopefully a lot of cool things.
Yes. Looking forward to it.
Hopefully Allie will preach sometime in the next year. Yeah,
We'll see.
I don't want to pray. No,
I might have a
it'll
baby
happen.
on my hip, but
Yeah, you will have a baby on your hip. It'll be great. So that's just your cue, community, to tell Allie that she should preach sometime. All right, put a little pressure there. Okay. All right. See you guys.